Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our College App Kickoff. My name is Amy Bencomo, College and Career Specialist at Prospect High School. Before I introduce our guest, I would like to encourage students to use the chat box for college-related questions. This is a great opportunity to hear from us at the end. So have a pen and paper ready, have your phone ready to take pictures if you need to, but be prepared to absorb a lot of information. We welcome you, but hold off those questions to direct them either through email directly to Ed or to myself so that agency during this presentation. So thank you. I'm glad you're here. And I'm happy to introduce the amazing Ed Devine. He truly is divine from Xavier
Thank you, Amy,
University.
so much. And good evening to the students and parents of Prospect. Excited to be working with you as you set out on this college journey. I'm sure there's some excitement, perhaps some anxiety, and you're in great hands. So just listen to the advice of your counselors. You're doing the right thing. It's a process here. You will learn some things along the way. There's always some energy and enthusiasm about this, but the hope is that we're guiding our young people to think about themselves and be purposeful in this search and to think beyond just some of the recognition of schools based on what's in the media. But really kind of helping them to understand who they are is an important part of this work. I always tell students to start off with that, if you learn something about yourself in assembling your college application, then you kind of win. You win no matter what the outcomes are. And this process should help you to grow and experience some new things, learn some new things. And again, that's a big part of this process. It's an individualized process. So as a community, as parents, as aunts, as uncles, really kind of meeting the students where they are, understanding that each find or each college selection should be celebrated. The schools that we know of, again, we know of for some good reasons, some just that the schools are noted regularly in the media. But really the journey that these students are about to embark upon for the 4 years is what I love talking about. And what we're going to talk about today is this transition to college and how it really should be considered in the college search. So a lot of times at this point, students enter this process thinking all the power is at the university level. We get to make decisions. We pick who will attend our campuses. But what we want to have the student think about, and as parents have you think about, is that really the power shift will actually take place next March or April when students collect their admit letters. And really the students have an awesome opportunity to make a selection at that point. They are going to probably be left with 3 to 5 to 7 or 8 acceptances. There's going to be this consideration of financial fit, personal fit, perhaps how the student changes over the next 9 months in that decision process, but really helping these students to land in April at a point where they can make an educated decision is what this process is about. And as part of that, I think really thinking about the 4 years of education ahead of them is something that we really want to present. And so this session is entitled Transition to College. I will talk a little bit about what actually happens on college campuses, what that first year is like, how we are doing nationally at schools all over the country in regard to transition to college. Here we're going to talk about persistence rates and graduation rates, things that you can look at and consider within that college search. But about myself, I've been working in the higher ed arena for the past 30 years. I've worked at 7 different institutions, started out at a college in Boston, a pharmacy college. I'm currently at Xavier University, which is in Cincinnati, Ohio. It is one of the 27 Jesuit institutions. So in your backyard, you'll be familiar with places like University of San Francisco, Santa Clara, Loyola Marymount are great representatives of the Jesuit institutions. Across the country, you'll know places like Gonzaga, Boston College, Georgetown, the 4 Loyolas, also part of that system. I've worked for schools in the Patriot League, Lafayette College in particular. It's a highly selective school based in the East Coast. I had the opportunity to work for Hawaii-based institutions, Hawaii Pacific University, the largest private institution in Hawaii. I went to college in Maine, grew up just north of Boston, went at Colby College in Waterville, Maine, stepped into this field of college search and college admissions and really have loved it, namely working with the young people as they make this transition. And again, what I like talking about is building that capacity to unpack that 4 years ahead of you. My parents didn't get to sit on a college campus at any point, so it was new for me as the oldest of 3 boys. And so the look back on what I got to experience and the growth is an exciting part of the backdrop of how I present this to you. Also, my wife is a college counselor. She's at a high school in California, so we share and talk about this process quite a bit. But I've always worked with students that have been going far from home, whether the students leaving California to go to Pennsylvania or leaving Pennsylvania to go to Hawaii. This idea of leaving home and going away to college has been something I've looked at and talked about and love to discuss. So we'll talk tonight about forming your college list, really how that's the critical thing that you'll do now. And with the assistance of your counselors and perhaps teachers, finding a balanced list with schools that make sense. Always love the schools. We'll talk a little bit about your competitiveness at each of those institutions, but really loving a college list and the idea of college right now. Not a good idea to love a college and overcommit at this point. You may work towards applying early decision or early action, but for the most part, students are kind of grooming a list and a kind of imaginative experience of college, what they want to do. We're going to reflect quickly on your final choice. We'll jump ahead to April, get a sense of what it's going to feel like to be a student in April, a senior making that final college choice. We'll talk about selectivity. And then I really want to talk about the stages of adjustment, the things that you will go through as a student, perhaps as a family, as that transition and that acclimation to college life takes place. If you haven't yet, one of the things that we always do as far as an exercise with families is to imagine now in the safety and the confines of your home, maybe tonight after this session, do a role play situation where as a family, you pretend, moms and dads, that you're dropping a son or daughter off at a campus in Hawaii or Vermont or Alabama, and you're saying goodbye. And you're going to turn around and perhaps get on a plane or get in a car and go back home and leave your son and daughter with us, the institution, to set out on the beginning of their young adult life. Go through that process of visualization. Some families get pumped. They're like, yay, we're separating. Others, it's going to be a little bit of a tearjerker to think about that actual moment. So we will talk about that, and then I'll share some advice. Like Amy said, if you want to type anything into the chat, happy to take a look at those questions at any time that you put them in there just to kind of keep us on track, but also happy to reflect on those at the end of the session. We'll hopefully leave a few minutes to chit chat. So first off, in the college search, a lot of students start out getting to know the college. They start to look at rankings. They start to look at, where do I know schools? How do I know schools? And their focus is on colleges. And really what they want to do is start at an investigation of who they are. So getting to know the college is part of the process, but getting to know who the student is really critical. So one of my favorite interview questions when I meet young people is, why do you want to go to college? So reflect on that very question for the next 9 months, right? Why do you want to go to college? What our students translate that to, the ones that have completed search, is what's my bucket list? What do I want to do? So spend your research time thinking about opportunities that will avail themselves to you come your college experience. So study abroad, internships, clubs and organizations, majors, opportunities to have roommates, all of that stuff becomes that bucket list, that checklist item you want to take with you to college. Begin to get a fair assessment of your academics, your grade point average, the type of curriculum that you have. If you've tested, where you are with those tests. If you're approaching this as test optional, you may still have test scores completed and kind of deciding if they speak to who you are or they don't, and you may decide to submit those or not. A real investigation into your activities, the who you are, the what you do outside the classroom. Because of COVID, we've expanded to look well beyond the confines of school events or organizations to what you do as an individual outside of high school. Think about things like where you've enjoyed travel, where you feel happy, where you kind of feel invigorated. So thinking about cities, thinking about distance from home. Always you got to think about weather. When you're leaving California, you might have to consider the weather pattern, what the opportunities there. Just talking with a colleague of mine who was a young person growing up on a border town in Texas, and one of his only goals was to experience snow. So he ruled out all the schools in the South and decided to go to school in Ohio. That was a major bucket list experience that he wanted to enjoy. But think about inspiration, hobbies, kind of what you like to do on the weekends, on a summer day. Do you like hiking, the ocean? Do you like the cities, museums? Do you like quiet space? All that assessment is about who you are, and that's where you start this process. Along this time, you'll start to assess the schools and start to get a feel for who we are. I'm going to talk about our academic profile and how that will help you define and manage your list. But think about where you learn well. Big classes, small classes. Are you interested in the large school and the big football games on Saturday? Why? Ask yourself why all the time. Is that important to me? If you have majors, one of the things we see more and more students undecided or not 100% sure. So kind of looking towards the educational opportunities at the school could be part of that as well. Considering things like the diversity of a region, the location, the weather, the campus surroundings. It's okay to ask that. A lot of students starting the search feel they only can ask me questions about Xavier, but Cincinnati is an awesome place to be a college student. It is the #1 place for college graduates. I love to talk about Cincinnati and the experience that you'll have there. So lean into that, lean into the place. So when you get to know you, again, you're asking, why do I want to go to college, right? The more you get to know the college, you're going to be able to answer why a particular college. So the first question, why do you want to go? The second question, why a particular college? That answer, the why a particular college, should help you to narrate or tell the story of why you want to go to a particular school. In short answers or supplemental questions, you should be able to say things like, I want to do research. I've done it while in high school. I know that Xavier University offers opportunities for research through their nursing program. So showcasing your research, showcasing what you've done becomes part of the story that you get to tell. The assessment of who you are will lead us to an understanding of why you fit at our school. So ask the question, why do you want to go to college? From that, you should be able to plug in some of those answers and build that list out over the next 9 months so you really have a bucket list, is what our students currently call it. There are 3 tiers usually to the list that you put together. So most students these days are applying to anywhere from probably 5 to 10 colleges. You really don't want to go too much beyond that. When I went to school, our average was about 3.4 universities. It's well up in the 9 range now. So students have expanded their lists. This grouping of schools, reach, target, and likely, will help you to manage a list, will help you to be aspirant in some regards, to think about schools that might be a little challenging, but it's okay to kind of, it's wise to put schools in all 3 lists. The aspirant schools may be selective, right? They may have higher GPA testing or academic rigor than you might present with, but you think there's other reasons you love the school and that they would favor you in the application process. Good to have a couple of these schools on the list, but not just because they're tough to get into, because you can define why they're important to you. So anybody applying to Ivy League schools, a lot of our UC campuses now fall into this reach category because they're admitting a really small percentage of their applicants. But find out where you fit with previous classes that were admitted. You can look at what's called the college profile, and they may define where that middle 50% GPA was, where that testing was, and you can kind of get a sense of where those schools will be placed. The target schools, you fit pretty cleanly, right? You're about at the average. You're right there hovering in the middle of that 50% or above it, right? And so you feel confident that you've got the ability to get into those schools. We make decisions on the university side that don't always make sense. They oftentimes serve our institutional priorities, so it won't always make sense. That's why casting that net to 2 to 3 schools that you feel confident about will be a wise choice. You might not get into all of them, but those target schools are really that sweet spot. You're their type of student, and things might work out. The likely schools, you might exceed or excel their application requirements. Their GPA average is a 3.3 and you have a 3.8. It doesn't mean that you're not stretching it. It just means that you really want to have those schools on your list, those schools that there's confidence. None of these are slam dunks. You can't go easy into the process with any of them, but those 1 to 3 schools that you apply to that are likely are going to be that kind of insurance that, okay, I've got places to go. Again, when this comes out, said and done, the decisions, many students will get into a reach school, a target school, and 1 to 3 likely schools, and they may choose the likely school because they find fit. They may choose the target school, and we'll talk about that in a second. Every school on the list, all of them in every category, define why you love them based on characteristics of the school and based on personal reasons for you, why you want to be at that school. So love them all, we say, right? Selectivity, as we launch into this has changed a lot. A little bit about this is for the parents. College selectivity has kind of gone through the roof or down through the bottom. Many of our students, when I ask what's the most selective school, they'll be able to name the percentage of acceptance rate. It's getting close to under 4%. The public Ivies, so a lot of the UCs now fall into the below 20% admit rates. When I went to school, Ivy League schools could have been 18 to 22%. So now your colleges and universities in state that should be open access or accessible are very demanding to get into. So we'll look at this. Most selective schools, Ivy League, public Ivies, some of the academies, if you're considering those. Highly selective would be, I worked at the Patriot League School, Lafayette College. I attended a NESCAC school, but schools like Occidental, the Claremont McKenna's in our backyard would be examples of these highly selectives. The moderately selectives we'll take a look at. There's a great network of schools called the Colleges That Change Lives, the CTCL organization. Really great schools, small, a lot of care for the individual. I work for the Jesuit institution, Xavier. A lot of schools fall into this kind of moderately selective, and we'll break that down. There's selective and then open. So when we take a look at these bands, some of the highly selective schools, again, they're under 10% at now, about under 5%. Just look at the funnel, we call it, the number of apps that they would get to sit a class. So one thing to always consider, what's the freshman class in a school? This is a real example of the school in the most selective category. They sit a class of 1,600 students. So probably as large as many high schools out there in its entirety. But this school here in the most selective category, to get that class of 1,646 students, they'll go through almost 23,000 applications, right? So they'll read and assess 23,000 applications in a short period of time from November to March, perhaps. And so the amount of time given to an application could be anywhere from 8 to 15 minutes, right? And then a decision is rendered, but you're down at 9% in this example for a most selective school. Highly selective schools probably fall in the band of anywhere from 18 to 30% admit rate. Another example, again, looking at what we like the students to see is that there's a large number of applicants there. Again, this doesn't mean the school is better, that it got any better over the last 20 years. It just means students are applying to more schools. We don't see more high school graduates right now. We're kind of in a cooling off phase. And we haven't lost seats in higher education. We just see students applying to more schools. And so in this case, a 22 admit rate. What I'm going to drive your attention to now too is another number called the yield rate, the number of admits that choose that institution. So it's always shocking, I think, for sometimes students to think, wait, somebody turned down Stanford, somebody turned down Harvard. Yeah, that happens, right? That's empowering. When I worked at Hawaii Pacific University, we had a student who was also admitted to Harvard, and she chose Hawaii Pacific University over Harvard. And we were so excited. We put her in all of our brochures. But for her, the idea of being in the Pacific and studying oceanography there made sense to her, right? So not every student admitted to these schools chooses to go there. There's a precipitous drop when you move from most selective to highly selective. You can see probably schools in the highly selective ranging from 80 to 90% in yield rate. Highly selective schools, that can be cut in half, right, down to 40%. So that's where these schools are admitting a lot more students and getting about half to say yes. The selective schools admit about anywhere from probably that 30% up to 55%, 56%. Again, pushing large numbers through. We're getting some idea of the metrics, the GPA. We don't have one number that really helps us define this. Test optional is a huge part of the landscape today. So those tests might be historical representation. What you will see is test scores are going up because fewer students are submitting them. If you have a 1600, you're going to send it. If you don't have that, if you have a 1200, you're probably not going to. So a school's averages tend to be jumping. So really focusing on GPA and curriculum as the primary decision factors for institutions within the world of academics. And then a whole bunch of personal qualities are considered. But you can see that school, this example, down to 24% in that yield rate. I'm going to reference this again. It's a way that you can give schools confidence to put you in the class, giving them the idea that you would choose them if they chose you. Moderately selective schools, again, as high as 78%, 82% admit rate. Some schools are open, you just can enroll, just apply. But you see these yield rates now at 21%. National average is about 70%. So if you look across the nation with an average of about, again, 8 to 12 applications being sent per student, our average admit rate nationally is close to 70%. So it's not a question of, am I going to go to college? It's really a question of where. And managing that three-tiered list, having schools in each of the categories, even if you're a top student in your school, top testing, highly selective, most selective schools, the most selective schools will be a reach for anybody. It's not predictable. And when you're into that highly selective, it's a little bit more predictable, but any student applying to the Ivies, the Stanfords would really want to have a balanced list in their process. Won't go too much into early decision. That's a way to really show the confidence to the school that you're going to pick them, but that's something that can help. Just the school I work at, here's some example of how we work through the process. Our classes are about 1,500 to 1,600 coming in, and we will process that large number of applications. A first read is something we call I represent all the schools or read all the students in California. I'd be the first reader. I would spend the most time with an application. I would bring it to committee. But when schools do that first read, so the first evaluation of the application, normally we're somewhere between 65 to 80%. We want to admit, but we just know we can't, right? We can't send that many admit letters out. But let that hopefully give you confidence that admissions people are admissions people. They want to find ways to admit you. And a lot of times that first initial read, even at the most selective schools, somebody says, I think they can do the work here and that they would make a great student. So that is part of the process. But as we go through and we look at second readers, a second pair of eyes, then committee, that's where we get into deep cuts and deep kind of crafting of the class. This is when things beyond who you are academically kind of help us drive our decision making. And so it's beyond kind of what's in your background all the way into us serving our priorities. But what we consider, here it is, the curriculum and GPA, the two top things. We love to know what the students do outside the classroom. Again, this is part of the process. Test optional. Hopefully you feel empowered to perhaps think about tests, maybe take them even if unofficially, get a sense of where you are with the test scores, lock a couple scores in, then decide with your counselor, should I send them to this school and not that school, or what's the process there? And you may send some and may not send others. The college essay, again, hopefully you reflect on who you are, think about who you are, but that tells us a little bit about the motivation, the adjectives that describe you. Your teachers will give us some great insight into who you are. The short answers, you'll see everything that range from why do you want to go to our college? That's why early on I said, think about why do you want to go to college, and then be able to be specific and say why a particular college. But those short answers are centered around that, or the question of what motivates you. Why do you do what you do? Demonstrated interest, I reflected on that when you talk about yield rate. If you can give a school confidence that you will choose them, that helps them to put you into the class. Not every school will value or use demonstrated interest. Some of the schools in your backyard that don't, that's totally fine. But the more you lean into them, the more you learn. But oftentimes schools will look at and evaluate, have you visited with us? Are you connecting with us on the internet? How is that process working out as you move through? So here's how we talk about you. This is what you know that you're going to put together in your application. We talk about your academic qualities and your personal qualities, two kind of aspects of the person. Again, most students can do the work at an institution. The personal qualities, the demographics, the who you are, your narrative, your voice, we often talk about those things as how we see you plugging into our campus, where we see you making impacts on our campus. So again, think about that bucket list, try to match and marry your background to what we offer. And that's really what's going to help you to prepare for this transition to college. The bucket list, here's a short example of some of the things you may want to consider doing, but there's a whole host of thinking about, what do I want to do in school? Again, we talked about clubs and sports and organizations, majors and minors, study abroad, all kinds of things that you can do. Expand that to exploring a new community like Cincinnati, and you will find the opportunity to create this understanding of what you want to do. As juniors and seniors, you're probably working through and getting into closing in on this, maybe 20 schools you're deeply researching. Be open to some change throughout the fall. Totally fine to add new schools or pull schools out. We see a lot of that, but you'll be making that list and starting to get that application completed in the fall. We notify students typically in March. Some schools are February, March of their decision is when you should have all the decisions. Some schools are rolling admission. Interestingly and weirdly, you don't know the cost for you until March, but that's something that will come into play. Oftentimes that idea of financial fit. And then May 1 as a student is the date you have until to make that final decision. So just to kind of put the timeline out there for us. Again, some websites to look at your list, consider your list. You're probably working with Amy and you know, figuring out how to assemble a list. But at this point, kind of be inclusive. Don't start ruling schools out. As you think of schools, think, why do I like it? Size, location, major, and then find schools that look and feel like that, but are in a different place. So some resources here to find and expand that list. Some great schools here by grouping. Again, we talked about you got the UC system, a great private school system here in California, a really strong community college system to consider. I represent one of the Jesuit institutions you see here. The Western Undergraduate Exchange is kind of a scholarship agreement between states in the West, 17 of them. Doesn't mean it's the right fit, but it could help find financial fit. There's the Women's College Coalition, the Historically Black Colleges and Universities. There's a lot of conferences out there, right? So the Patriot League, the Ivy League, they're just athletic conferences. There's nothing magic about them. So like the SEC, the Ivy League is an athletic conference. I mentioned the colleges that changed lives, a grouping of schools that really had deep impact on a student's trajectory in life. And so kind of open and be considering to those. A lot of them are small schools of 2,000, perhaps in the Midwest. I went to a NESCAC school. Colby College is one of the 44 NESCACs. So really expand the list. Think about these different types of schools. You've got 3,000 to consider. So have fun with that. Hopefully you get back out there and get to test drive campuses, lean into us. I just wanted to mention, don't be afraid to engage us virtually. It's still part of what we do. We've learned to see students really engaging more deeply and showing deeper connectivity and interest in our schools by taking advantage of some of the virtual stuff that we do as far as tours, student panels. But when you can come back and visit, get a sense of who we are, please do that. Know that if you visit a school, you can really extrapolate a lot of what you learn in that visit to include and help build out that list. So you'll start to see what colleges and universities look and feel like, and it's very, very much translatable into another school. So you might look at Xavier and get to visit with us, but that might help you to understand Santa Clara or LMU as a sense of schools with similar size and similar mission. So why you'll choose a school, here's some of the reasons that students give. Reputation is the only bad one. Don't ever choose a school just because it's a great school or just because it's ranked highly, but have fun with the list and the reasons of why you might choose this school. And kind of, you know, think about these things as you move through the process. All legitimate reasons, all personal reasons, all part of that who am I will lead to that understanding of that final choice. But, and this is really for you all to think about for April, the top 5 reasons that students choose the institution after that research and self-assessment: location, location, location. So with that, again, I've worked at schools from Maine to Hawaii. There's no right answer to which school, but there's a right place for you, right? There's a place you're going to love. So think about location as far as distance from home. Think about it as far as weather, ease of traveling to and from, but what you're going to get to explore while there for 4 years. The size of the institution, really, students oftentimes think big first and then maybe kind of adjust that, but really understanding how you learn best, where you want to find yourself as far as classroom sizes, where you want to find yourself as far as total student population. You can think a little bit here about schools that are focused on undergrad. Where I went to school, it was only undergrad students. A school like USC or other schools that are larger might have a really big graduate school population. Just a little bit of shift in the attention that the undergrad gets when you see that and see the different sizes. Cost of education is always part of the decision factor. The goal is to not have that be the case, but as you kind of expand that list, those targets in likely schools often will give you more money in scholarship and grant. So sometimes that school might move up in a list because you were awarded some scholarship or grant funding. I got accepted. This is based on some survey data that we've done for years. Students say, I picked a school I was admitted to. You can still Google search. A young lady attended Stanford for a year. They denied her. She just lived with her friend, and not a good way to build for your future. But don't overcommit to the school. When you get accepted, reassess your list. Part of that research did show that students didn't use their ranking from before they applied. They used their ranking from after they were admitted. So if you apply to Brown and they deny you, oftentimes students say, it wasn't really that high on my list anyway, right? But the number one reason, and this will launch into this idea of transition, but I hope you're thinking about it. You've got your wheels spinning. If there's anything compelling you want to type into the chat, the number one reason you think that students choose a school, it's not mom and dad. It is not necessarily some of these other things we think about, and it's usually not even a statistical kind of data point you can capture. But what it is this gut feeling. And students say all the time, it just felt right. There's no shortcut to get to that process. There's no shortcut to get to that gut feeling. It purposefully needs to stew until April, and sometime to the very last hours of April. As an East Coast school, I often see students applying, but also committing at 11 p.m. on the last day of April. Quick SAT tip question. If it is 11 p.m. in California, it is already the next day in the East Coast, right? But we are okay with that. But use up that time, that runway to make that decision. It's yours, but get to this point. Parents, you are now consultants hoping or helping your students get to this commitment of this is the place, this feels right. There will be discussions about how far from home, financial fit, etc. But the gut feeling is the important part to get to so that students then are geared up for this transition to college. As Rachel Snyder, a student I work with, talked about, just find out what's important to you, what you want to do, find places to do it, but be purposeful about getting out and doing it on that campus. Meaning that school is not passive, right? So what you're going to be hit with when you get to our campuses, we are just getting ready. We are a couple weeks away from students from all over the world descending upon our campus in Cincinnati. Time of excitement, time of anxiety, but think about this concept of fitting in, right? Meeting new friends, learning a new environment, living with a new roommate, all part of the process. You're going to learn to balance a new schedule, a new lifestyle. College has a lot of free time, but that free time is designed for you to utilize in preparation. Not as much structured class. A lot of the class is to help you go back out and do some research or do some homework. So really this balance of work, social life is important parts of this. You will probably have questions. You will probably need help. That's okay. We have counselors on campus at Xavier. We have a 44-member success coach team that is there just to help you in that transition to college. They have been working with our current freshmen, our rising freshmen for the past few months as far as schedules and transition to college. They are bucket list managers as well, right? They're going to work with you to make sure you get your major and everything done for that 4 years. So look and define where a college has programs, their freshman orientation. Ours is called Manresa. Texas Christian University has something called Frog Camp. We went on outdoor excursions for at Colby. So what's that freshman orientation like? Then look to define actually when what we call club week, club day, is when the clubs and organizations recruit new students to come join their clubs. Define that, find out when it is. Find out what some of the cool things about freshman year are. Look at retention rates. There's a big dropout rate. A lot of students get to schools and just they give up. Too many, right? 30 to 40%. The worst thing about college debt is to not have the college degree that's going to help with that return on investment. So talk to schools about that retention. If their numbers are great, 91%, 92%, awesome. If they're not, just define why or how you're not going to be the student that leaves. But that gut feeling is what's going to push you through the transition. I guarantee on every campus, there's students every year who don't like it and consider transferring. And I've seen it for years. I thought about it myself. I thought I picked the wrong place. It's worth pushing through, getting to the growth into sophomore year, and then being able to claim the place as home. There are 7 stages of adjustment. I'm going to run through these. They're kind of fun. We looked at this with a cultural anthropologist who had studied people moving from one country to another. We applied it to the university system. Now we base a lot of what we do in that freshman transition period on these stages of cultural adjustment. So the first one you're going to see is our students committed in May. They go back and be seniors, enjoy graduation, go to prom. But then sometime over the summer, they start this planning for leaving to go to campus. This is called the pre-entry and anticipation phase. Its key counterparts or examples of what happens: anxiety and excitement, right? So you can see the excitement in going to Bed Bath and Beyond and crushing it there. She's got the matching lamp that goes with the holders and all the stuff that she's got set up there. She's ready to go, right? Decorate her room. But the little guy on the left, Rover, that represents the anxiety, the what I'm leaving behind, the home behind her, right? It's scary. It's scary for mom, scary for dad. And that little guy, that little furry 4-legged friend is not too crazy about this process, right? He doesn't understand. He can wait till Thanksgiving to see her again. But we capitalize on this. This is a moment of energy. We have learned to do more with summer in the way of Instagram and Facebook and webinars and connecting you to your classmates, but be prepared after May 1 to lean in. We have send-off parties. So a lot of schools just completed a party in San Diego or LA or San Francisco where a bunch of alumni hosted the new students getting ready to leave. And that's an early entry connection point. When you get to our campuses, it's awesome, right? It's what you're dreamed about. All the pictures we put in our brochures and on our websites were taken in this beautiful time of fall, and it's high energy, it's fascination, sometimes a little bit overwhelming when you're meeting all new friends, but it's called the honeymoon phase. And in the honeymoon phase, we know there's great energy, great excitement. This is a picture at Xavier of Carnival Day, and it's a day that you can see all the clubs and organizations set up outside on the quad and introduce and invite people to join clubs. We know based on research that a student that gets to campus and joins 3 to 5 clubs within the first 2 weeks has a very high success rate. In comparison to students who do not, that built-in club experience, the fun part, is really important. What you find while joining clubs is that it's going to help you with time management, but really importantly, you get connected to upperclassmen who will serve as your bigs, the people that have been through it with you. And so we take advantage of, again, making orientation week critical and important and high energy, because this is what's going to happen, especially in Ohio, right? We don't put this picture on the website or in the brochure, but you're going to see some cold, snowy days. And this is what we call the initial shock phase. And this is when all of a sudden this place doesn't look and feel like home. It doesn't matter where you grew up. You could be going to school at Dominican or Santa Clara. Things will look different. food tastes different, right? This initial shock is going to cause some pretty catastrophic moments with your family. You're going to call mom and dad and say, this is dumb. I shouldn't have picked this place. I should have gone to the other place. The small differences will cause a lot of frustration. Our advisors will tell you that once you dump this, once you get this off your chest, most students kind of go back about having fun and making that commitment. Parents, they oftentimes dump it on you. You feel horrible, but then they go out and have a great time with their friends. But knowing that this small differences can cause frustration is where, as parents, as managers, as consultants, you push the student back to the bucket list, back to the why. Hey, you know what? You get the first snowfall, or you don't like the food, or you had a tough midterm. But remember what's coming up next, the start of basketball season. There's a huge event on campus. Remember we talked about that during the search, or you have the opportunity to do a program in the January term. And remember, you were excited about that. So signposting for the student to say, hey, this is what's coming up. This is when they start to make their first phase of adjustment. They start to find connection. This is a group called our Move Crew. It's our students that help in transition. They actually unpack your entire car in about a minute. Your stuff will be taken from your car into your dorm room. They help you get there, and they're going to help in that initial adjustment. When academics get tough, you kind of go through another phase where you think about being, you kind of feel isolated. People look to cliques for support, but sometimes the cliques bring each other down when you're only working with freshmen who are in the same transition. This is when we're really going to encourage you to step out of your room and go do some of the social life and student life things that are important to campus. It's always kind of tied to when the rigor of the courses gets tougher, when the idea of your time management skills may be tested, this idea of isolation, can I do it, starts to creep in. But join clubs, I love this picture. So we have California's groups on a lot of campuses. So find your people, right? Your people might be based on where you're from. They might be based on your interests, your ethnicity, your background, but find that group, branch out, find them, spend the time with them, and you'll build in this support. It really starts to feel like home. And then you're moving on the way towards this final stage of adjustment. We call it the advanced adaptation. This is what the parents don't like, because oftentimes this may take until spring of your first year. It might take until you land on our campus sophomore year. Some people have a compressed, I got it over with in 3 weeks. Others, it takes a year and a half, right? But get to sophomore year, make a personal commitment that I'm going to ride it out that far, at least through freshman year, because that will give you greater opportunity to get to the point where you're one of us. You make the transition. This is our Cintas Center where our students celebrate basketball games. We do new student orientation here. We also graduate here. But around about this time when you're making the adjustment, you're starting to see this college experience as fleeting. You can start to see and realize it won't be there forever. And you can start to understand that I've got a bucket list. I want to do these things. I'm going to focus on moving forward, not wondering if I picked the wrong place. So that's a little bit about the 7 phases of adjustment. I will just close and then open it up to questions because I can talk about this forever. The risk reward factor of going away to school or leaving home. Again, if you go 10 minutes down the road and live on campus, you will go through these phases in this transition. Be purposeful in the mindset of thinking about freshman year. Look for what the college does to help you in that transition. Prepare yourself to jump in and join clubs. So we will say, and I might in an interview say, what have you seen on our club list? We have 200, but what are clubs that you want to do? What are traditions you want to take part in? Spell those out. It will help you make a decision in April. It may help you get admitted when you're tasked with writing a supplemental essay on why do I want to go to this school. But really, it's going to help you to map out the 4 years of fun things to do. So on our websites, yes, go to our admission page, but branch off and go to our student life page. Look at our history pages to really find out what it's like to be part of our team. If you ever get to communicate with our graduates, a great opportunity to see and talk about this whole evolution of becoming an impassioned graduate or alum of our school. There's something called the National Survey for Student Engagement, and it is parked on a lot of the websites, the college websites. It's not a ranking, it's kind of a grading card to see how students do in these very issues of transition, It's a pretty cool way to look at and understand schools. It looks at the ability to meet with faculty, connect with faculty, to find support in time management, how you get mentorship. But from it, we know a couple of things that students, I mentioned before, join 3 to 5 clubs and take advantage of knowing a faculty and other professionals, 1 or 2. We're not talking about, increasing making a ton of friends, but 1 or 2 professionals or faculty that you can sit and have coffee with, you can meet during office hours. That's going to be really that mentorship that will help you greatly. When we talk about financial aid, you'll hear the term federal work study or work study jobs or working on campus. It's great. It helps offset costs. It helps students get spending money, but it's a great example of how students can connect with professionals on our campus and kind of build in the opportunity to get expert kind of mentorship organically and accidentally at times. As you make that decision for May 1, think about it as a starting line, not the finish line. Too many students say, I got into X school, I chose it, and then they passively approach the college experience thinking, hey, make me awesome, college. But May 1 is a starting line. Everything else is preseason, it's dress rehearsal. Be thinking about from May 1 on what you need to do over the summer, the fun opportunities, the orientation, but really think about May 1 as that time you kind of toe in on the start line and get ready to begin that college process. Again, you'll fall back and you won't even care if the student, where the school was ranked, how selective they were. None of that is important at that point. What is important is the what you've learned about yourself through the college search, and the what you want to get done over the next 4 years. So I know we're coming up to 3 minutes left. I want to open it up and take a look to see if I have any questions or comments. Happy to address those. And if Amy wants to come back up and check in here, I'm welcome her to do that. As I look
Hello,
for my
Ed.
chat feature, yeah.
Okay, that was amazing. I loved it. And, it is so much of the starting point. You said something that resonated with me, which was connecting with professors. I mean, I graduated from college, we're say a couple decades ago. It was 3, but I recently decided to go to grad school, and I had been in touch with, the last 30 years with one of my professors. So it was easy to get that letter of recommendation from someone who I had as a professor.
Yeah.
Now, I don't recommend waiting that long, but I mean, those are elements of your college experience that are going to build into your professional life. Those personal connections and discerning what are your priorities and making sure that you glean that from the school you decide to go to. So, Ed, you just got me energized about this. I mean, I can't wait to talk to all the students now.
Yeah, I hope it is. It is. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Amy. I think if we look back on life too, when I went and did graduate coursework, there's a concept that is called managing your teachers or managing up. And the idea of being interested, and you get to grad school, and now you're kind of fine tuning what you want to study and what you're interested in. But I started to understand that faculty are people. I don't know if I understood that in college. I just thought they were geeks about one particular discipline, and that's all they thought about. I'll never forget a faculty member who invited us to her home for dinner, and we got to meet her family. I'm like, she has a dog and kids, and but that opportunity was, I was nervous. We went with classmates, but that professor became the one I did my study abroad program with. So the mentorship was just organic. I didn't think, and it wasn't a program I signed up for, it was having dinner. But these are people that will remember you. And I think, like Amy said, if you go back and talk to some of the faculty that you have, and even do this in high school, they're so touched if you come back and say, hey, you made an impact on my life. I had a professor who was really, I cry when I think about him, because I was at a time where I started pre-med, and how this all played out for me is I was in the club, I ran track, and I was pre-med, and I fainted when I went to the emergency room for my internship, and thought, I got to drop out of college. That was my initial reaction. And of course, I went and told my friends, and they, of course, laughed. But one of my friends, Dave, said, I think you should talk to this professor. I think he's got some things you might want to hear. And Professor Morioni sat with me, encouraged me to take an introduction to sociology course. And lo and behold, unwittingly wrote me into my new major of anthropology and sociology. And I went back and thanked him one time, and I kind of didn't, he was thinking along the lines of, I helped you find a major. And I said, no, you helped me stay in college. Like, you helped me to kind of find purpose. And so it was greater than just getting my degree. He loved hearing that, of course, but I love that's how the organic process took place. You don't need to show up and be like, I'm going to be the most famous business person or doctor. You don't know, and that's fine. But really be open to and seek out the opportunity to connect with these teachers and these faculty, because it should be scary. You know, we give you the impression that you have to be perfect and everything's got to be locked in and you've got to have direction. But really, this process is about self-discovery and doing what, you know, finding what you love. I never knew what college admissions was and found it later. So, but I'm glad that you kind of had that experience too, Amy. And it's those little things. You're never going to look back and say, well, that college that was ranked here helped me get to this station in life. It does. And based on research, the name of the college will be instrumental in the first job. It can have impact, that's for sure. But job advancement, career advancement, next moves have very little to do with that school. It has more to do with what you do in your profession. And that's why sometimes students start to look at the ranked schools or non-ranked or big and small to kind of find out what's going to best prepare them for that future in their professions.
Right. And definitely keep this personal. This is a personal commitment, not your best friend's commitment, not your parents' commitment. And parents, remember that. I love how you started with envisioning your departure, because you know, well, in my case, I got a little teary-eyed thinking about when I said goodbye to both of my children. And yeah, it happens. It's going to happen quickly.
Yep.
And that's part of it. So but yeah, it always comes back to, you want them to be happy, you want them to complete their education and leave better and
Yep.
independent. Like, and that's another reminder for parents, is that this is the student's application. Make sure they do it.
Yeah, we exactly. And I think that's, you know, we do have to get tough with some parents and say, we'll have parents ask, what should we write our essay about? And it's never going to be a we or an us. It's more of a coaching. And for parents, it is. Our advisors will talk, and it continues sometimes when students get to campus, but they'll say that you have, like, if you think about a tandem bike, you have pedal power, but not steering power. So what you've taught them in life and the consulting, like, we will invite you to parent orientation. So think about and ask that. What's parent orientation like? During parent orientation, your goal is to kind of learn where the support is, the name of the office, where it is on campus, maybe have some contact points for yourself to reach out to when you feel there's need. But really, your job is to know what the students' resources are. So to tell a Xavier student, hey, did you talk to your success coach? Do you know the success coach is located in this building? Have you looked at the programming that the success team is offering? They have something on career exploration, etc. So parents have that role. They have their homework to do, but it's not about getting in or getting accepted. That's the son and daughter's part of it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's thank you for that. Let's, students, take advantage of the chat box now. We're coming up on the hour and we're going to close it out. If you don't have any questions, you can always circle back with me later, or your college and career specialist at your school. But you're welcome to jump off, say thank you in the chat box. That would be nice.
And I put my contact information, and I'll put a little link to my webpage if you do have any questions, of course, about Xavier, any of the Jesuit schools, or kind of this transition conversation that we had. Happy to engage in that conversation. Like I said, we do love what we do, and I think working with Amy and kind of partnering up in this journey is, you know, we love it. We love kind of the opportunities that you have. A lot of people take that oh, the places we'll go kind of slogan and say, have fun with this. So that was my contact information. Yeah.